The first thing we ever see in Deltarune is a soul. But, funnily enough, souls are something that we actually know extremely little about in the Deltarune universe. Sure, we got a pretty good idea of how souls work in Undertale, but we have to remember that this is a completely different universe now, and we can't assume that what was true about souls in Undertale is still true here. If anything, there have been increasing amounts of evidence that souls are very different in Deltarune than their Undertale counterparts. Despite all the confusion around souls in Deltarune, there are some things we know for sure, and I think I have some good ideas about how they work as well. So let's restate the facts and then go on to theory crafting. By the way, if you enjoy the video, then consider subscribing. I try to have one of these theory videos out every week, so I'll make it worth your time. Anyways, onto the video. Well, if we're talking about souls, then we can't just ignore the only soul we actually get to see in-game, the red one inside of Chris's body. Despite being able to see it in action, this soul is easily the most complicated one in the game right now due to how many mysteries surround it as well as Chris. We may not know everything about it, like whether it's actually Chris's soul or the player's soul, but we do know some things for sure. From just raw gameplay, we figure out that it's what we, the player, use to make decisions, dodge attacks, and that if all of our party members go down, then the soul will shatter and either leave Chris in a critical state or straight up kill them as a result. We do get further exposition from dialogue, however. While the intro cutscene to Chapter 1 is still a little bit too mysterious to really say anything concretely, we do actually learn some things about it from good old Rousey. He not only confirms that the heart is indeed the soul, but that it is also the culmination of one's being, holding your will, compassion, and even the fate of the world inside it. Whatever the heck that's even supposed to mean, but that's a topic for another video entirely. By looking at your party, you can also see that it is classified as a human soul, heavily implying that there is a difference between human, monster, and possibly even Darkner souls if they even have them. Speaking of, we don't actually get to see Rousey or Susie's soul in combat for whatever reason. Instead, whenever the red soul gets hit, whoever is targeted takes damage. It would normally be implied that everyone has the same red soul because of this, but even when Chris isn't the one being targeted, it is still their red soul that has to dodge bullets regardless. We also see that it is still able to follow Susie around the Card Castle prison and even follow her into a fight with Lancer somehow, despite Chris still being in a cell. It is also able to close dark fountains, and seems to shine and close them automatically when Chris gets close to one. The last two things we get about this soul in Chapter 1 are that Chris is able to rip it out from their body, and a strong indication that the soul and Chris are actually two separate beings, with Chris tossing the soul into a birdcage to seemingly act of their own accord, while we the player only have control of the soul and not Chris anymore. Chapter 2 only reinforces this idea of Chris and the soul wanting different things, especially in the Snowgrave route, and gives us a few other interesting bits of information about the soul as well. For one, we got Spamton, the only Darkner besides Rousey to acknowledge your soul, but also the first Darkner to actually want your soul. The only other real piece of information we get in Chapter 2 is the strong suggestion that Chris can't live without this thing. Sure, they walk slowly and creepily after ripping it out in Chapter 1, but in Chapter 2's ending cutscene, it's clear that they are actually struggling to move without it inside them. Other than this, we don't get much solid information about this mysterious red soul. Overall, there are still a lot of questions to be asked regarding this thing, and a lot of the red soul's properties are most likely pretty unique to this soul in particular. However, seeing as this is the soul that we are most up close and personal with, I think it would be unfair to dismiss and gloss over it completely. Next, let's talk about Lightner souls. Let's start off with what the book in the library tells us about them, since it should give us a pretty good idea of what is actually known about them by the general public in the light world. Firstly, it does back up Rousey's claims about the soul being the source of one's compassion and will, something which we now know applies to all Lightner souls and not just the red one. The book also describes it as a container of life force, but admits that the true function of the soul is still unknown. This book seems to imply that souls aren't very well known about in the Deltarune universe, but hey, maybe it's an old book and we'll get more recent findings about them in later chapters if this guy ever moves out of our way. The other book in this library, however, does make a distinction between monsters and humans, however. And since the description of the red soul is that it is a human soul, I think it's pretty safe to assume that the souls of monsters and humans are different in some ways. With this information so far, it can be pretty easy to just assume that souls work how they did in Undertale. Monsters have weaker souls, while humans have stronger souls with determination. Heck, I think this is what most people thought back in Chapter 1. But Chapter 2 threw us a huge curveball. This cutscene. When Queen describes the process of making a dark fountain, she says that it is only possible for a Lightner with enough determination to do so. However, she asks if determination is something that all Lightners possess, and shows a graphic of not only Chris, but also Susie and Noelle, with her entire plan even revolving around using Noelle's determination to create another fountain. This could mean one of two things. Either Queen doesn't know about the distinctions between monster and human souls, or that she really is implying all Lightners have determination, monster and human alike. While the former would seem the likely choice based on what we know from Undertale, there's a detail that makes this seem like the latter possibility is much more likely. Right when Berdly is about to make another dark fountain, Rousey quickly interrupts him and shouts at him to stop, since doing so would bring about the roaring. Rousey's eagerness to get Berdly to stop what he's doing seems to indicate that he believes Berdly actually would have had enough determination to make another fountain. It is possible that Rousey also doesn't know about the distinction between monster and human souls regarding determination, but seeing as he's the most knowledgeable about souls out of everyone we've seen so far, light and dark worlds combined, I'm inclined to believe that he knows about that. If this is true, then it means that either monster souls and or determination are wildly different compared to how they function in Undertale, since monster souls in that game can't even take a little bit of determination without turning to mush eventually. From all of this data, I think there are 4 big possibilities here. Possibility 1 is that monster and human souls work similar to how they do in Undertale, and that both Queen and Rousey don't know about their differences, like how monsters can't have determination. Perhaps they make this false assumption because they see monsters and humans as both Lightners at the end of the day, and not as separate types of beings. Possibility 2. Monster souls do work in the same way as they do in Undertale, but determination works differently, and monster souls can actually contain it without turning into, well, you know. Possibility 3 is that monster souls are much different in Deltarune, and can contain determination not because of a difference in how determination works, but from a fundamental difference in the monster souls themselves. And finally, possibility 4 is that both monster souls and determination work completely differently than how they do in Undertale. We honestly have no clue or many hints at all towards any of these possibilities being more likely than another, but we can be on the lookout for more clues towards these possibilities in future chapters. Phew, well, that was a lot. I told you that cutscene really threw a curveball, right? Chapter 2 definitely gave us a lot of information on souls, and I think we have a pretty good idea of what kinds of possibilities we're dealing with when it comes to how Lightner souls work. And finally, Darkner souls. Despite Rousey giving us tons of information about how our soul works, he never really talks about how his own soul or Darkner souls in general work, or if they even have souls at all. There isn't actually any talk of Darkner's souls at all throughout all of both chapters so far, at least that I could find, so we'll have to use context clues to make conclusions about them. Well, for starters, do they even exist at all? I can really go either way here, and it remains very unclear. Darkners are all normally inanimate objects in the real world that only come to life with the help of a dark fountain. It is possible that the Dark Fountain imbues them with souls. We also see that Lancer has some recollection of his time as an inanimate card. However, there is one bit of information about souls in general. No matter what kind of soul it is, souls are constantly described as containers of life. If characters like Lancer and Rule's card really had containers of life in them at all times, then why are they turned to stone when they step into another dark world? While we may just have about zero information on Darkner souls given to us through dialogue and text boxes, if they do have souls, then my best guess at the moment is that each Darkner's respective dark fountain either gives them their soul or imbues their soul with life force. Again, we're not even sure if they even have souls, so this is really just a shot in the dark at the end of the day. So that was all that we concretely know about souls without speculating too much. Now, let's make some educated guesses to try and find out more about these things. Let's backpedal a bit and talk about the red soul, or specifically, what characteristics are unique to this soul and which of its traits can be applied to all souls. It's clear that the red soul we control definitely isn't an average soul. It's the only soul we see capable of sealing dark fountains and even shows signs of being strong enough to manipulate others. However, that doesn't mean that there are still some aspects of this soul which can't apply to all of them. For one, I think that a lot of what Rouse said about our soul in the beginning applies to all souls. What he says about the soul containing one's compassion, will, being a container of life, and overall the culmination of your being, is all backed up by the book in the library that talks about souls in general. So I think that most of what he said, besides the whole changing the fate of the world thing, applies to all souls and not just the red one we see. As for the rest of the crazy stuff we see this soul doing, well, I think that Chris's soul is unique when it comes to sealing dark fountains. If it wasn't and Susie could do it, then why doesn't her soul glow or react at all when she and Chris are standing in front of one? It could be because Chris and or the soul has a special connection to the fountain, or because it's simply stronger than Susie's soul, but either way, it's definitely unique in this way. I'm inclined to believe that it is at least a little bit stronger than Monster's souls, however, since it is able to manipulate Noelle to the point of committing mass murder. There might be other factors that went into it, but the evidence points towards the soul being able to do this through sheer willpower. There are certainly a lot of unknowns with this thing right now, but I think it's a pretty good bet to say it definitely packs a bit more power than the average soul. Again, I do believe that there are 4 real possibilities concerning monster souls in Deltarune, with either monster souls or determination as a whole working completely different in this universe, or souls functioning how they did in Undertale. However, I have a hard time believing they are similar to how they are in Undertale, simply because it would just be too simple and easy. Aside from it being an easy way out in terms of the narrative though, I do have a hard time believing that Queen and Rouse would make such a fundamental error when it comes to Lightner souls. Queen has access to the internet, and presumably would know a lot about Lightner souls and their intricacies from online. I mean, a ton of our knowledge about these things comes from a single book in the library. Imagine how much Queen could know about them with the whole internet at her disposal. Rouse also seems to be extremely knowledgeable on how things work inside the dark world and out, so I have a hard time believing that he would make such a simple error like that as well. Both of these characters know enough about how this world works to the point where I don't think that Monster Souls or Determination can both work in the same way as they do in Undertale. The best theory I can come up with for the reason why Monster Souls are able to handle Determination is the absence of monster magic. Noelle and Susie strongly imply that magic is something unique to the Dark World in Deltarune, and we don't actually see any used in the Light World at all. Since monsters don't have souls that work with monster magic anymore, then maybe they have determination in their souls instead. Again, we don't have much to work with, but honestly, this theory sounds pretty plausible to me, at least for the time being. And those are pretty much all the thoughts I've had on the topic of souls in Deltarune. Knowing how many details there are in this game, there may have been something I missed, so let me know in the comments down below if I missed anything, and let me know your own thoughts and theories about souls in this game. Oh, and I should mention that I'm also starting a Patreon. I appreciate any kind of support I can get, and even $1 can go a long way. I can't promise any big flashy rewards for donating, but you will have a bit more say in what theory topic I should cover next in the form of polls. I know I'm not like these other extremely talented creators who make crazy long theory videos with amazing editing, but I do plan on making one of these theories every week, or at least until we literally run out of theories to cover, if that even ever happens. I really appreciate any support you guys give me, and at the end of the day, I'm just extremely grateful that you even watched this video in the first place. With that said, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.